George Kilpatrick, Inspiration for the Nation, celebrating people we feel good about. So we're talking about the intersection of faith, sports, and leadership. And joining us now is Harry Patterson with the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, an organization dedicated to transforming lives through the power of faith and athletics. Harry, welcome to the show. So, Harry, tell me about your journey and how you were drawn to the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, or FCA, as you proudly wear on your shirt.
George, as you know, I used to be on staff at my local church as a staff pastor for about 16 plus years. And towards the end of that journey, around in the 15th year, I just felt like the Lord was calling me to do something else. I just had a stirring that I was supposed to reach outside of where I was fellowshipping and start doing something a little bit different. At that time, I came across a young man who used to be at our church, and he was a part of FCA. And he had mentioned that they were looking for someone to take over the Central New York region. And the state director had asked him, said, if you could hire anybody, who would that be? And he said immediately, Harry, I said your name. He said, but I don't think you're leaving because you at the church and everything's good and you're not coming out. But little did he know, God had already been talking to me about doing something different. So after a few conversations with the state director, the Lord said, hey, Harry, you're looking for yourself. This is the thing that you're going to step into. Now, mind you, I'm stepping into it, at 55 years of age. I got a wife, I got 4 children, 3 of them, I think, were in college or what was about to go to college. And I'm like, all right, Lord, you want me to start a mission? You want me to start doing missions-based ministry right now?
So be clear about what that means, because I don't think people get exactly what you're saying. Start with that.
Well, mission-based ministry is where people who give off their generosity is how I'm able to navigate going on campuses without their money, without their giving, and the Lord speaking to them. It just doesn't happen. So that includes salary, that includes resources such as things like this. This is a book that we use with coaches on the book of Proverbs. We got coaches' Bibles. We got athletes' Bibles that we put in. We've got these little bracelets, a little swag. I got a shirt on that say at Family FCA. And so those are the types of things that through the generosity of donors, in the community and across the country, even across the globe, as they sow into it, they become a part of what we're doing in ministry.
So totally mission driven. And so again, let's reiterate.
Yes, sir.
55, 3 kids in college. No, 4 kids.
No, it was 3. It was 3. Yep, 3 in college.
3 in college, and one about to do something. And it takes a lot of faith.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And that was the word that the Lord has spoke to me. He said, Harry, you're going to build your faith. Your faith is going to deepen and widen through this journey. And George, I can tell you that's exactly it.
Well, as the Lord is speaking to you, what was he saying to Rochelle?
Raquel.
I'm sorry.
Raquel basically was like, here, if you believe God's calling you to do this, then get out there and do it. And so that was how she came alongside. In the beginning, it's kind of like, you doing what? I said, yeah. I said, babe, I think this is what the Lord's calling me to do. And after some prayer and stuff, she came back to me and said, you know what? I support you. Step into it. And so it's been a 3.5-year journey thus far. And I've grown a lot. My faith has deepened and widened. It's one of those things where you could be receiving no donors for like months. And then one day you wake up and you get an email alert that someone just sowed a seed. And then you go and look at the seed and it's like, oh, wow, someone just gave 1,000. Someone just gave 10,000. Someone just committed to giving 500 a month, so that we can look at how we're going to budget and just provide ministry for these student athletes and these coaches.
So how, for people that are not familiar with the mission of the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. How is it lived out in schools and in communities?
Well, the beautiful thing about Fellowship of Christian Athletes is it's for the student athlete, meaning that we look to find student athletes that want to grow in their relationship with God. And then through that, they establish an FCA club on their campus. So whether that be a high school or whether that be on a collegiate campus, even in professional sports, we're looking for people, young people who will say yes to the Lord. And then we come alongside them and we say, hey, well, FCA has some tools that can help you develop as a leader and get understanding of the Word of God. The beautiful thing about these Bibles, George, is that they're set up for athletes. So they have athletes lingo. And so, so what we call our gathering is a huddle.
Oh, okay.
Most people understand that a huddle is when people gather together to hear the play. And that's what we do with the student athletes. And so through that, they get developed as leaders, and they're the ones that take the charge and the lead in their schools. So just like a chess club, just like a science club, just like a glee club, they can establish the same thing in their schools if they choose to. And that's my heart, is to help them be bold enough to say, hey, yep, I love God. I love Jesus, and I want to live that out. And I get a chance to live it out through sport.
Now, can you share a story about where you saw the faith and athletics to come together to transform a student or a team, for example? Because obviously to proclaim this is obviously the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And so,
yes, sir.
And you're not saying you have to be of a particular denomination. You're just saying you have to be of the Christian faith. So what about how you've seen faith and athletics come together to transform a student or a team?
Oh, well, that's a great question. I was actually just at a campus huddle out at Ithaca College. Ithaca College's huddle just started last semester. And since their first Tuesday evening session, they have had over 50 young people showing up every week to hear the gospel. And one of the leaders, the team leaders, was sharing a story last night about how she stepped into a moment that she didn't feel qualified for. And she's a gymnast, and she went over to one of the opponent's teams and said, hey, we're getting ready to pray. And then she just walked away real fast because she didn't think that they were going to pay attention. All of a sudden, girls began to show up. And by the end of the meet, it was so large that they had to use the whole mat. First, they were just gathering around just the pommel horse. Then next thing you know, it went around to where they were taking up the whole space, the whole gymnastic floor, where everyone was coming alongside and saying, hey, we need this. Individuals from, I think, all of Division III schools. And out of that, she said, I saw that if I can stand up for the Lord, there are many others that want to do the same thing. And so that intersection allowed for that to be a great tournament and a great opportunity during gymnastics. But she saw that it was beyond gymnastics. It was about glorifying God in what she was doing.
What about your own faith journey and your devotion and then your calling? Talk about that.
And what specifically would you like me to talk about? Because there's several ways I can go with that.
Yeah, I'm specifically talking about your calling to the ministry and how this is a fulfillment of. But what happened? Where did this start? How was that seed planted, and how did you begin your own journey? Is that along the lines of what you were thinking about?
Okay, yeah, I can talk about that. Well, really, George, the whole thing started from, I would say, probably my great grandmother. When I was born, my mother said that they used to always say, that's my preacher, that's my professor. And, I was little, so I didn't really know, didn't understand those words. But over time, those words began to stick because my mother would remind me, say, hey, your grandmother called you this. Your great grandmother used to say this when you were stumbling around the house and crawling around the house. And so then fast forward to about 2026, 27, my mother called for a family fast. And at first I refused to fast. I said, no, Mom, I don't want to fast because it was several days. And I said, I don't feel like I'm supposed to. And so I went away from that conversation. And that night, as I was fellowshipping with the Lord said, go on the fast. And so I called my mother back just out of obedience and said, Mom, okay, I'm going to do the fast. And George, during that fast, that was the time that the Lord called me to ministry. He said, I've called you to my ministry. I want you to minister my word. And I remember being very emotional when it happened on several fronts, because I immediately said, there's no way that I could do this. Um, I had seen so many different things in ministry, some things that were good and healthy and some things that were unhealthy. And my heart was always to the Lord, Lord, I don't want to do this if I'm going to be moving in an unhealthy way in ministry. And so from that, I stepped into ministry. And I tell you, since that moment, God has really blessed me. I asked God for ministry children. So anyone out there, if you think that you called to ministry and you don't have children yet, or you have young children, ask the Lord for ministry children. What does that mean? That means that they recognize and know in their hearts the commitment to ministry. So when you're woken up at 2 or 3 in the morning and you have to do a hospital visit or a home visit, or things like that, that they still can recognize and know that you still are their parent, that you're still their mother, you're still their father, and they love you and they honor God for who you've been called to be.
Mm. So, and that's powerful. But I also think that, not also think, you also have to, even if the Lord is speaking to you, you have to accept it in that moment. And a lot of people don't do that, right?
Yeah.
We call it the wrestling and the battling, or they slide away, even though that calling is on their life. And so, did you ever have that experience?
I'm sure it did happen. I think that when things get tough, I think there was one moment where I felt like I was going to potentially start my own ministry. And that was for me, it was scary, nerve-wracking. And that didn't happen. It hasn't happened at this time. And I'm still open to whatever the Lord does. But I think in that moment, I was like, are you sure I'm supposed to be doing this?
Mm.
Because you get that way when you kind of see yourself doing things, but you're not yet doing them.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And you start clicking on the time clock. I was saying, Lord, I think I put in enough time for this to happen. And in his infinite wisdom and in his sovereignty, he's like, son, just keep serving me. And so that's what I've endeavored to do thus far. And right now, I'm serving in FCA, and ministry is starting to explode in Central New York. And people are starting to know what FCA is, what we're about, how we're trying to impact the lives of these young people and these coaches. Because the reality, George, is that athletes and coaches are going to have platforms that influence more people than most people in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the way we do it.
And the research bears that out. And it's interesting because, and so the coaches themselves don't have to be necessarily involved, or do they? Like, do you have to have a relationship with the coach, or is this the students themselves independent of the coaches?
Well, it depends on how the huddle is set up.
Okay.
If the huddle is set up in a way that's called a all sports huddle, that means that any athlete from any sport shows up at it, then that one doesn't necessarily have to have coach influence and input. However, it's always good to be letting the coaches know what's going on with their players.
Yeah.
And so they're athletes. And so that's one of the things that I always do. So when a huddle starts, I'll always say, hey, look, make sure you invite your coach.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell the student athlete to invite their coach to it. I'll say, hey, here's my contact information. Let the coach know that I'm more than happy to sit down with them. Now, you can also have just a sports specific huddle. So if it's baseball per se, I'm definitely talking with the coach
Mm-hmm.
because the coach is allowing me time.
Right. So,
And
because I'm thinking if the coach is of a different faith tradition, for example, how does that
Mhm.
impact your ability to do the huddle?
You know what? It really doesn't. Everything is always about buy-in.
Right.
And so if that I'm not trying to be there to say, coach, you got to believe this way. All we're coming in and saying is, hey, coach, you have some athletes who believe this way,
Mm-hmm.
and they would like to establish this. I'm looking to see if we can at least agree that this is an opportunity to invest in their lives, develop them as leaders, and let them live their lives out authentically and on purpose.
So, what kind of presence do you have? Does the Fellowship for Christian Athletes have in Central New York? What's your territory, and what do you have coming up that people can avail themselves of?
Well, right now, our territory, our footprint is Central New York. And this is the way that FCA has set up what they call Central New
I was
York.
going to say that. What are we talking about?
That's right. Central New York, they're saying up north in the North Country, all the way up through Watertown, going up close to Canada to the border, past Buffalo. You're talking about out towards Utica area. You're talking about back out towards the Auburn area. And you're talking about as south as the southern tier in Binghamton. I still to this moment to this day don't understand how Southern Tier got on Central New York, but that's what they're calling it. And so any schools, any colleges, any high schools that are in that area, if they reach out, and I'm saying this from a standpoint of what I believe God spoke to me about how to be effective in this ministry. If a school or a program reaches out, that means that we potentially have buy-in. And that's how we start launching it out. So it's not a whole lot of cold calls per se, unless God says, hey, I want you to reach out into this community. If we sense that we need to go into a particular area, particular demographic, we'll do that. But most of the times we move on when people reach out to us. And when I say us, I'm talking about the Central New York team, which is my area director, me and other area representatives and other campus directors. And we say, okay, if someone's reaching out to us, we believe ministry is ready. The field is ripe for harvest in that area.
So, how do people reach you?
They can go on our website or they can reach out to me through my email address at hpatterson@fca.org. Send me an email. Also, my number is 315-382-4175. And they can send me a text and say, hey, we heard you on the podcast with George Kilpatrick, and we want to let you know that we've got some young people that we want to connect you with, or we want to hear more about FCA.
And for the huddles,
Yes, sir.
so 382-4175. Did I do
Yes,
that right?
sir.
That's
Yep.
area code 315 and
Yes, sir.
hpatterson@fca.org. And what is the website?
And the website is simply fca.org.
Okay. That love
Real simple.
real
Go right on there.
simple.
You can find us real easy on that, and that gives you opportunity to kind of check out the website, see what we're about, capture the mission and vision of the ministry, and also look at the values that we deal with. Our four core values are serving, integrity, teamwork, and excellence. And so whenever we coming alongside a coach, whenever we coming alongside student athletes, we're talking to them about those four things and saying, hey, whatever we're going to do through FCA, whatever idea you believe you got, whatever outreach you want to do, it's going to go through these four things. And then lastly, I
Go
was just going
ahead.
to say real quick before you go on. Lastly, our method for providing ministry, and because our whole goal is to develop disciple making disciples. So we want to develop the young people and the coaches to be able to disciples one of their peers, one of their constituents. And so they do that through engaging, equipping, and empowering. And so very simple. We engage people where they're at. And should they decide to choose Jesus as Lord and Savior, then we begin to equip them in terms of teaching them about prayer, about reading the word, about getting connected to a local church, because FCA is not a church. It's a parachurch. It's a ministry. What our goal is to move people along to get connected to the global body of believers, which is the local church, so that they can have a spiritual family outside of FCA.
Yeah, and that makes a difference. Okay, so if there's one takeaway you want listeners to leave with about the importance of faith and athletics and the work of the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, what would it be?
George, that one thing would be, if you are a parent of a young person that is growing in their relationship with Christ, and you want to see them continue that on and live that out outside of just showing up on a Sunday or at a Wednesday Bible study, I want to encourage you to challenge them to consider FCA. Look at the website, reach out to me, and let us have a conversation and a dialogue for you to share your heart about what you want to see for these young people. I believe that young people are the golden ticket of transforming their school communities, not just for their own peers, but also for the teachers and adults. And I leave you with this. The impact of this is just like having, excuse me, just like having a pep rally at your school. When a pep rally is happening in that auditorium, there's everybody that's at that school that's in that auditorium. It's the students, your peers, and it's the adults. And when those athletes come in, everybody is cheering, everybody is excited, and everybody wants to be a part of the team. And so as a young person, if they can walk into that gymnasium and to that auditorium and give God glory, they have just sown several hundred seeds into the lives of many people. And if someone comes along and waters it, then that means there's more fruit that shall remain for the glory of God.
To God be the
That's
glory.
cool.
How do people get involved who want to help?
Well, one of the ways you can get involved is you can become a donor, and I can share that information with you. Give it to George, and he'll make sure that it's on here. It's my.fca.org/Harry Patterson, all one word. That's the way, if you immediately feel like God's calling you to sow a financial seed to help the ministry go forth in this area. You also can partner with us through volunteerism, through huddles. If you got a school that you have a heart for and you believe that you could come alongside that school and help FCA ministry grow there, that is also a way. And then there's also opportunities for staff. If you believe God's calling you to this type of ministry, we can also work with you and talk you through that.
And, maybe we can cause that phone to ring, 315-382-4715 here. FCA.org, Harry Patterson with the Fellowship of Christian Athletes here on Inspiration for the Nation. Good luck with the ministry.